So ladies, gentlemen, fellow Kryptonians out there, I was gonna do a news roundup video today going over various DC news, including extras, Superman tidbits and quotes, also lanterns, casting stuff, among other things, but I'll have to save that for when I get around to doing my news roundup video because this, well, a 5-minute Superman clip, of course, that warranted its own bloody video. It's time for us to officially break this down here on the channel, and I have quite a bit to say already. Shout out to those of you guys who joined the live stream last night where we first discussed this when it first came out, but now we are loaded with some really cool theories about hearing Superman's parents in the background, so Jor-El and Lara, a theory on the Fortress Robots themselves, and one that I find super fascinating there, and a bunch more that we've extracted from this clip. We've also got a little sizzle of clips on the end of this scene, if you will, that we're going to get into, and warning, I mean, if you couldn't tell from the intro already, we are going to get pretty in-depth, so stay tuned, as I would love to hear your feedback on whatever I have to say and just point out from this 5-minute scene. But right before we get into it, one more little kind of quick update here on the trailer. So James Gunn said, though I don't consider it a trailer, what was just released, more of a sneak peek, I guess, I'm actually just finishing up the next trailer for you all now. And oh boy, am I excited for you to see it. So I know we've been talking a lot here about this bloody upcoming trailer. It wasn't at CinemaCon, but it's gotta be April 18th, aka Superman Day. I believe Good Friday as well. So I guess this is gonna be happening real soon. Just honestly, guys, make sure you're subscribed to the channel to keep up to date with anything and everything Superman and other stuff like going on in the DCU. I'm sure you won't be disappointed because, you know, I bring a lot of DCU content here. So let's get into this. We see Superman crash down at the beginning, as we saw in that first teaser trailer, and the Fortress Robots, and more on them in a minute, later on say that he has 14 fractured bones, damage to his bladder, his kidney, his large intestine, and his lungs. So he has been completely whacked out by something, and to do that kind of damage to Superman is just crazy. Now, what intrigues me is that the clip, as Gunn said to Fandango, so this is like some of the extra stuff we have to go over in a future video, maybe coming tomorrow, that the scene is a little bit from the beginning of the movie, which is not the whole beginning of the movie, but a truncated version of that. So obviously, I would love to know what happened to him moments before that, which could cause that extent of damage. I mean, at first I thought, oh man, this has got to be after that encounter with Ultraman and the Engineer, like in the stadium, the Lord Tech Stadium. But then I remembered, but wait, like Gunn said, this is kind of at the beginning, you know, it's like a truncated version of the beginning or whatever that means. Like, so it's roughly at the beginning, but don't necessarily think it picks up from the very first second of the movie in this scene. So who really knows for now? But it, you know, I guess it could be one of those things, just to toss this theory out there, in where even though this clip is towards the very beginning of the movie, and how that could be set in the present day of the movie, if that makes sense. What could really happen is that after this scene at the beginning of the movie, it goes back to the events preceding this to kind of explain how this happened, how Superman got this busted up and, you know, landed down in the Arctic to get Krypto to help him. So this could still be to do with his encounter with Lex Luthor's henchman, the Engineer, and who we just call, for simplicity's sake here, Ultraman. And of course, Superman in this moment, as we saw from the teaser, whistles for Krypto, and this is where we see quite a different version than what vibe was given across in that first teaser trailer. And after I heard about how this scene went down from those who attended CinemaCon, I had a bit of like apprehension after hearing it, which all while like people had a very positive reaction from what we were hearing coming out of CinemaCon, I was just coming from the angle of thinking, well, I hope they don't come across as like beating a dead horse vibes with, you know, the comedy they're going for with Krypto there. But now, seeing it for myself, I thought it was really well done. Like, shocker here, but I really do mean that. Like, the scene to me still felt like intact from the vibe that we got from the trailer, in the sense that it's still no joke. Like, Superman is severely injured here. Yet, Krypto coming in the way he does adds what I would just call quite simply this levity to the scene, which really works. I mean, you may disagree with me, let me know, but I think the levity does add to the vibes here. And I've seen multiple people say how this even hit for them as well, like as dog owners. Not quite as hard as Krypto does to Superman, after all, as he's a literal dog with superpowers, but just from the example of how they've actually experienced very similar things and how they've been injured. They may have even had a broken arm or something, and their dog has kind of come up to them and jumped up, with their paws on them, on their legs, as they were sat down or something like that, and they were in pain. So yes, not all dogs are the same, but Krypto is doing a very doggo-dog thing here. It's just clearly with enhanced superpowers. And, it's quite brutal because Superman is so injured with those 14 fractures, among other things, that you can even hear his bones crack when Krypto tries to grab him to get up, among other little cracks. I also thought that the CGI was really good here on Krypto. I mean, if you didn't know already, even though they did have a dog, like 90% of the time is a CGI dog. And just the overall energy between Superman and Krypto in this scene is really telling for, like, obviously the other energy between them and the chemistry, if you will, that we're going to have throughout the movie. I honestly don't really have any complaints. Like, what can I say? So Superman is so busted up that we get that familiar line, and he asks Krypto to take him home. And Krypto does just that. And again, guys, we've already heard the descriptions ourselves as I went over in that previous news roundup, but now seeing this part for myself, damn, does the Fortress of Solitude look good in Gunn's iteration. Like, the score kicks in with purposage on Murphy's score, and then it kind of pauses with the fortress erupting from the ground, the crystals just growing layer after layer after layer, and they're brought before this kind of massive circular door that we're all familiar with because it was the teaser for the teaser of the teaser. Yes. That will never get old saying that. And then Krypto barks and it lights up and lets him in. It kind of illuminates the House of El symbol. And I honestly don't know what much more I can say here or articulate other than I love the design of all of this. Like, for me, it's great to see crystals like this for the Fortress. I think that's what a lot of us just associate with the Fortress of Solitude. Yeah, it's kind of got a little bit of innovation in design here with the way Gunn's approached it. Again, just to bring it up, I feel like the work that's been done on the CGI here, in my opinion, is really polished. I was saying this in my live stream last night when this first came out, and shout out again to those of you who reacted to this dropping along with me. But the VFX here is pretty damn polished to the point of where it doesn't kind of give that Play-Doh-esque plastic vibe, if that makes sense. So, like, when you see Krypto there and Superman, it's not like a bad background is, composited behind them. Now, I know, obviously, there is a practical set there to an extent as well, but it won't be every inch of the shot. Like, take that from me. I have actually seen a couple of set photos of the Fortress months ago as I went to detail to you guys. And, you have, like, the backplate kind of stuff, giving it the depth of field of the Fortress of stuff that they add in. And it just looks good. We've all seen it when movies have, like, bad use of green screen, blue screen, or like volume, where it just looks off. Like Thor Love and Thunder kind of comes into mind there, where you just see the foreground characters in the foreground. It's like, there's something off. That background doesn't look very real. Now, obviously, they filmed in Svalbard, Norway. A lot of it is real, but a lot of those fortress crystals at points won't be real, or while some are practical. But either way, it looks very clean. Very, very clean. So I just think that they've done a great job with the production design here, but also the polish on the VFX. Also, another thing, the colors really pop everywhere. The suit looks great. I've seen lots of people online, despite, negativity always coming into this. Again, each to their own, but I've seen a lot of people online really dig how things look here. I know the design of the suit might not please everyone still, but, you know, seeing it in motion here, it's pretty damn cool to see, and it pops pretty damn well. Now, what intrigues me is that the fortress rises upon approach to a Kryptonian and a Kryptonian dog. So I don't know if it like reacts like a car key. Some car keys, when you walk to the car, it just knows the key's nearby, so it unlocks the door, if that makes sense. So it's like, hey, I detect Kryptonian dog DNA or Kryptonian DNA itself, but the door doesn't necessarily open right away. Like, Krypto still had to bark to get that glowing House of El symbol to light up. So the question is now, how does Luthor get in? Even if he still somehow got the fortress to erupt from the ground, he'd still need to get past that circular door just through like the process of how it seems to unlock, which is leading me to think that the black suited figure, again, who we just hypothetically call Ultraman for simplicity's sake, could very well be that clone of Superman theorized by everyone that enables Lex to enter the fortress. Again, not sure, but that would make a whole bunch of sense. Now, as they enter the fortress, we immediately have the automaton number 4, voiced by Alan Tudyk, as many of us had thought when we heard that he still had a role. He had a role in Superman. He rushes towards them and he shouts, "Superman." And quickly behind him are some of the other Fortress robots, which are number 5, voiced by none other than Michael Rooker. Some of you may recognize his voice here.
14 fractured bones.
Then we have number 1 and number 12. Now, I'm not sure who, at least as of when making this video, who is voicing number 12 or number 1. Number 12 kind of sounded like the voice actor for Alana Rostovic or Nina Mazursky for a split second, but I don't know if it is. Now, I've said this for a while, guys, but these are heavily influenced design-wise from All-Star Superman. So all while Gunn isn't like copy and pasting in this adaptation the plot line from All-Star Superman, the tone and like a lot of visual design of this movie is very much so influenced from that comic book. And I think that is really, really great. Now, as they all lift Superman here, and we're going to get into the Jor-El stuff in just a second, but this part is really interesting to me, and they take him to the emergency Kryptonian procedure. Superman says, "Thank you." And this whole bit with the robots, like, just to say it again, it really fascinates me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And that's because we had Alan Tudyk's number 4 saying, "No need to thank us, sir, as we will not appreciate it. We have no consciousness whatsoever, merely automatons here to serve." Meet 12. She's new. And when Superman looks up at number 12 in pain, and he kind of just about makes out a rough smile and nods, we have 12 excitedly say,
"He looked at me."
Now, at first, this may seem contradictory to what number 4 said, right? Like in how, well, if he's literally saying, "No need to thank us, man," because, like, well, we're not going to appreciate it. We're just robots. We have no consciousness whatsoever. Why would number 12 then look at Superman looking at her, laugh, and almost be giddy, saying like, "He looked at me"? Well, clearly, I think this is very deliberate with what each new iteration of a Fortress robot is meant to be, like with every way. So stay with me here. You may have noticed Alan Tudyk's number 4 Fortress robot likely means the 4th iteration of a Fortress robot. I mean, after all, he says that number 12 is new, and she has a 12 on her chest within the House of El crest. I love the design here. But since he is the 4th version, notice how number 4 was a lot more blunt and wooden with his voice. Like, not so emotive, more robotic, even going out of his way to say to Superman not to thank him, as essentially there's no point. And yet, with many iterations later of this robot, with the newest 12th version of the Fortress automaton, if you will, they've clearly improved with each version. More human-like behavior, if you will. And then, even if you observe number 1, what we can assume to be the first Fortress robot, he also speaks very plainly without any emotion. So yes, like, evidently, at least to me, in my opinion, I think Clark has put a real effort into trying to get the Fortress to create, or like himself to create robots in the Fortress that can portray some humanity into. Maybe he gets other robots to help create other robots, as he didn't seem to know number 12 before number 4 introduced him to number 12. But I think he's put the task on making these robots with every wave have a lot more humanity, which is why the newest iteration with number 12 has a lot more personality and is so much more lively. Now, why would he do this? Well, I can imagine Clark wants to feel more connected to these walking Kryptonian contraptions, as after all, they're a part of his heritage. Like, if he can make it seem like they connect to him with a bit more mimicking of humanity, and possibly even, as a result of all of this, actually achieving possibly one day a better AI that, despite what number 4 said, may seem more like consciousness eventually. Maybe that could be achieved with more and more waves, and the first kind of glimpse of that is number 12. But I also do wonder now if, because number 12 is so lively and emotive compared to the previous versions of the Fortress robots, well, we all know what James Gunn is like. And if Clark, despite only just meeting her now in this clip, like maybe he connects with her a bit more in the movie, and since she's got the most personality, and that could very well be what Clark, as what we've gone over here, wants out of these iterations, well, he might be very upset if he loses her. So, yeah, you may have guessed it, but what if, from the first trailer, that Fortress robot that we see pretty much destroyed on the floor, blatantly thanks to Luthor, the engineer and Ultraman, storming into the Fortress, was perhaps number 12, who got destroyed in an effort to objecting to Luthor storming into the Fortress, being like, what are you doing? And then boom. Like we had Superman crying there. I mean, this is just a theory, but I would love to know what you think about that. Okay, so next big thing is right as Superman gets brought in, we hear some voices in the Fortress of Solitude, like in the background off screen. So initially, I thought this was just other Fortress robots, as there are others wandering around the Fortress. I mean, after all, number 12 is the 12th iteration and the newest, so there's more than these guys carrying Superman right here. But then it occurred to me, and I'm seeing people come to the same conclusion online now, like, wait, this background chatter, like, they're speaking in a different language, with the word Kal-El being said by a man twice, and a woman also speaking in this language. Like, listen carefully here. Now, also, on the official subtitles for this clip on the Warner Brothers channel, this is displayed as Kryptonian chatter, not Superman robot number 4. Kryptonian chatter. So as most people have come to the conclusion of here, this is quite possibly the Kryptonian language that we're hearing here. And as a result, it's possibly a recording of Jor-El and Lara talking to each other, possibly even before sending Kal-El to Earth. And maybe, just maybe, this is one of the first few things that Clark has recovered in the Fortress of his Kryptonian parents. Like, perhaps it's also the only thing that Clark has of his parents, as he likes to listen to it maybe, or have it on loop in the Fortress to hear their voices. Now, the reason why I describe it like that, by the way, and if you've heard me talk about this in previous videos, is because I've always had this theory that what if in James Gunn's iteration of Superman, he hasn't necessarily interacted with this AI version of Jor-El that we've seen before, whether that's in the comics or the Christopher Reeve Superman, Henry Cavill's Superman, or to Tyler Hoechlin's, like, you name it. What if David Corenswet's Clark in this iteration quite simply hasn't, but he only has things, or something as simple as a recording, or a holo recording, and he only has the non-sentient automaton robots. And this is, again, what drives him to maybe connect to them or try and get a version of them to connect to even more. So out of not having very much, it's just like this perhaps atmospherical thing he allows to loop in the fortress. I mean, I could be completely wrong here. I fully admit that. This is what this speculation on the channel is always about. But roughly in this idea of Superman not quite having had a live conversation with an AI Jor-El in this version, I just think there's something in this version that could be the case, and I actually really dig that in a fresh take. And yes, I think that male voice in that Kryptonian chatter in the Kryptonian language that says Kal-El is the you-know-who casting that was leaked recently. But yeah, I won't say the actor's name just in case people are still trying to hide away from that rumored leaked casting. But most people are in agreement that it does sound like that person, just in a bit of a Kryptonian vibe, saying Kal-El, you know. So also, you know, just to go back to the Fortress robots, what if, for all we know, that each Fortress robot, and this is like, I admit, could be a reaching theory, but each Fortress robot that's made could also be an effort by Superman to try and create something sophisticated enough to host something like a Jor-El AI. Maybe he's working towards something like that within the Fortress. This is where, again, I'm possibly reaching. But regardless, I've always felt oddly confident in the idea that Superman hasn't had much, if anything, beyond these Fortress robots when it comes to talking about an interaction or a connection with his Kryptonian parents, let alone an, you know, AI version. But for now, let me know your feedback on the idea of it just being some kind of holo recording of some kind, like maybe a conversation before leaving Krypton. Loose things, maybe that Jor-El could have sent with Clark in the pod, and the recipe to make the fortress, if you will, like a living photo frame. And that's all he's had to work with. But there's something special and unique about a Superman like this that might not have had that almost tangible Kryptonian parent, even if it's AI. You know, it just adds to David Corenswet Superman's loneliness when reconciling his Kryptonian heritage in life. Now up next, as Superman gets taken into the room where the Kryptonian procedure happens, we go past this door here. I don't know where this leads. If anything, it kind of looks like an elevator door. Clearly, it does lead to somewhere or some other kind of area that we'll be seeing in the Fortress. And, you know, in the comics, the Fortress is pretty damn big as well. And Gunn seems to be going pretty comic accurate with all the things that could be going on in the Fortress. So I'm looking forward to seeing other areas. But we then come, speaking about other areas, we come to this great wide shot of the Fortress. And again, I love the design, and I don't know how many of you remember, and I'm not blowing smoke up my own arse or trying to make it seem that way, but I actually described a portion of this room months ago now. Well, I've done it a couple of times in videos, because it wasn't really spoilery. It was just me giving a very vague description with how I was lucky enough to be sent from a source a couple of pictures of the set of the Fortress. And, you know, I explained how I saw that Kryptonian console in the corner there. And the only way I could explain it, if some of you remember, was that it looked like some kind of Doctor Who TARDIS-esque technology. And I hope you can kind of see what I mean now. But like even below the big circular glass that magnifies the sun there, like you have that station which has the other discs on it and that little orb that shows Superman's vitals with the Kryptonian language on display. You can also see on the Kryptonian computer station with those discs that they've got little bits and pieces on display. Like it's hard to determine what they are. You know, I'm not Kryptonian, but the upper middle one seems to be scanning. As you can see here, it's kind of got like this little radar things. The one below it appears to have the House of El symbol right in the middle. You know, they're clearly doing something, perhaps monitoring for threats. I mean, who knows? You know, I can't wait to explore more of this fortress and what these different areas are about. You can also see in the background there are more computer stations, even other Fortress robot out of the 12 that there are. some on standby because they seem to be like stood against a power station that possibly charges them up. I don't know. But either way, they scan him. They go over the damage that I stated earlier. And I love how the chair that he's laying on is scanning him as well. And as the sun procedure begins, we have robot number 4 saying that with a healthy dose of yellow sun, we'll have you up and atom in no time. And the fortress itself, we cut to this exterior shot of it rotating for the perfect setup for light to shine through. I loved that. And I love also just how the Fortress robots here are talking as though they are doctors in an operating room. We have number 1 say, level 4, and Alan Tudyk's robot 4 is like 292 times Saharan Prime, please, 1. So I'm not sure if that means that, like, they're gonna hit Superman, or the sun rather, is being magnified there. Magnified 292 times the level of the Saharan sun, which, you know, my God, that is a healthy dose of sun, if ever I've seen one. Now, as it hits Superman, this is an interesting point of conversation because I think there's quite a bit of misconception going around, which I had initially thought about as well, because, you know, when the light hits him, Superman is in immense pain. So a lot of people are like, why is the sun burning Superman? Oh my God, this is so not accurate. What the hell? But in reality, what is really happening? Well, I think it's the healing that is hurting, because that actually would hurt. So it's not the sunlight being magnified on him, 292 times Saharan Prime. No, you know, as I've seen people say, like, what the hell, like, about that? Like, Gunn doesn't understand. Sunlight shouldn't hurt Superman. That's not the way I'd look at it, actually. It's more the regeneration of the 14 fractured bones, the damage to his lungs, the bladder, the kidney, etc. Like, that is hurting. Think about it. The accelerated regeneration of bones snapping and cracking and fusing back together, the possible micro tissue tears of the organs and God knows what fizzling back together from that major dose of sunlight is what hurts, not the sunlight itself. It's what the sunlight brings out in the body. So, you know, I hope that offers more perspective on why Superman is screaming. As, you know, I imagine if you had broken bones, that instead of, you know, how long does it take? Like roughly 8 weeks for a bone to fuse back together and heal. Like, rather than it taking that long, imagine it fusing back together within the span of a few seconds. I bet you'd feel like the broken bone level of mechanical pain as it heals that fast. Another way, I guess, to look at it is like, you know, when people get their arm just kind of snapped back in their socket, in their shoulder rather. Like, it's agonizing pain, but boom, it's over, like really quickly. It's that kind of vibe. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this clip, guys. You know, I'm about to move on to the sizzle clips, but overall, I felt like this gave a good, you know, this isn't really reflective of the whole movie, but now we're seeing emotion. We're seeing some of the score, to the atmospherical sound effects, to the color, like, it's all there, like, taped together now in a 4-minute 50 scene, 5-minute scene, if you will. And I'm liking the kind of taster, the aperitif, if you will, that this gives you. I do feel like if Krypto jumped on him just like for 4 more seconds, that would have felt like beating a dead horse, but it stopped just in time for me to be like, okay, they balanced that out quite nicely. He's doing a doggy-dog kind of thing, but too much more of that would have felt like, man, you really go, like, so do you see what I mean? There are things in where I felt like it could have been a little bit more distasteful for me, but I like it. I like the Fortress robots. I love the production design, the concept of everything. There's a lot to like here for me, personally. It's a little teaser. Let me know your thoughts. But now let's get into the sizzle clips after this. Now, they're mostly the same clips, but there is some interesting little tidbits, I suppose. So starting with Superman, you know, saving the girl from the Kaiju. Nothing really different there. But then you get like a moment here with Lex in the Luthor Corp tower. And it's funny how they did this. It's mostly similar scenes, but they do things like starting a second or two before the version we had previously in the teaser, and then lasting for a couple of seconds longer before they cut to the next clip. So here, thanks to that, we now learn that Luthor says he's back. So we now know what Nicholas Holt's Lex voice sounds like for the first time. And then, you know, I guess, you know, I don't know where he's back from, but it must have been from Luthor thinking that he pinned him down. You know, I also wonder if it's not actually back from that scene in the fortress or anything like that. It could be completely unrelated to that, but I wonder if he's back from maybe being trapped in that little glass kind of box that we saw in the previous trailer. It's like, he's back. By the way, we then get a millisecond more of Clark with Pa Kent, and interestingly here, I think he's giving a little bit of a smile or something like that right before we get that more sullen look we saw in the first teaser. So again, something else that a millisecond before this clip opens up to us. So maybe they're coming off the back of a conversation that kind of makes Clark smile before he goes into that more sentimental embrace. Then with Clark and Lois, as seen from the previous teaser, we get this scene a little bit earlier as well, where Clark is leant back in his chair with his coffee cup, then sitting up and looking at Lois while chaos ensues outside. Now, the big blob outside still does look like an iteration, a version of Solaris to me that Gunn may have, done through how Luthor could conjure him up as another thing that Superman has to deal with. And we can very, very clearly see evidence of Guy Gardner using his lantern ring in the background. That theory's been there ever since the first still image of the Superman suit came out, and we saw that big ball in the sky. Now, one thing I do still admit here, absolutely, is that it is still a little bit weird having Superman sat down with a cup of joe, if you know what I mean, while this is going on outside. Now, sure, your answer could be to me, well, that's nitpicking. You know, other heroes are clearly taking care of it. But, you know, it's like, well, sure. But, you know, like, you'd want to, minimize any risk, right? Like, any damage or injury to the city of Metropolis and get out there. So it is a bit, I don't know. Like, that's the only thing I feel a little bit iffy on out of these scenes. Up next, we do get a bit of an extended kiss between Lois and Clark. Again, another perfect example of, like, a second and a half more. Then we get the same shot from the teaser of the teaser of the teaser. And then I actually prefer this version of Lex looking upset here because it comes across more emotional versus the one we got in the teaser where it's more of like his face, if you know what I mean. Like here, he's actually a bit more lost in his anger and emotion. Like a little subtle difference that you may not have noticed in how these are actually two different faces of Lex in that same scene from the teaser versus this. And then at the very end, I actually just like how it's just the logo of Superman. Like, we didn't have, like, an end bit to that teaser trailer saying Superman, like, coming July. It just said coming July. But here, what they did is just the logo. Like, they don't need to put that official Superman text of the logo there because the symbol screams for itself. Like, everyone knows what this is. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of my in-depth breakdown for the sneak preview scene of Superman. So, oh man, it feels so good. Like, we got this even before the official trailer drops, probably on Superman Day, April 18th. We're eating good. I'm not gonna lie. Like, we've got more to come. Gunn teased that. So, I'm gonna shut up now. I've rambled enough. I just want to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let me know any ideas, any theories, your ideas on my theories. Would greatly appreciate a like if you got this far in a video. If you got this far, prove it by leaving a comment down in the comment section below, Saharan Prime. And until next time, guys, again, thank you so much for your support. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow Kryptonians in the next video. Goodbye.